was at least 30 guns pointing at me as I was walking up. At that very moment, I lifted my hand. I was like, Father, get me out of this. I fully surrender. I grew up in the church, and we would always go to church on Sundays, Bible studies on Wednesdays, and anything that they had on Saturdays. So that really started because of our background. So my mom's side is from Dominica, and then my dad is Nigerian. So our faith was definitely heavily up in our upbringing. So it didn't really start until the age of 12 when my mentor was standing next to me and my pastor had an altar call and said, does anybody want to give their life to Christ and really start this walk seriously? Did I understand the walk? No. Did I have an encounter with him? I would like to think so. But at that young of an age, I was just going based off of what my mom was doing. So she was real strict from the island coaches. So you know how strict they can be. So it was like, yes, I'll go ahead and do it. I'll do this. I'll do that. Yet it wasn't until I got to college when I realized, or even in high school, when I realized that I wasn't operating like everybody else. So everybody else was out there partying, drinking, and smoking. I wasn't able to do that, or I wasn't going to do that. And even when I got to college, I didn't do the same. I didn't do the same thing. So that's when I realized that I was different. My football journey, looking back at it, like everybody wants to be like a Tom Brady or a Patrick Mahomes because I'm sure he's going to stay there for a while. Like they want to just have one team and stick with that one team. My journey was not like that, but I realized that I needed every team in every situation to prepare me for the team that I would decided, well, my peers decided for me to be a captain. So I started real late. I started at the age of 12. And how I got started, I was just so tired of my mom telling me to do all the chores because from the island culture, like, hey, you got to clean, you got to wash dishes, you got to vacuum. And it seemed like every time I would come home, like there was always something for me to do. And she didn't allow us to watch TV during the week. So we lived right next door to a Pop Warner team, the Brandon Broncos. So I would go over there after I got done with my chores and I rushed out the door and I wanted to go see what was all the noise and commotion was about. So I go over there and it was football. And I was like, oh, well, you can hit somebody and not get in trouble? Yeah, sign me up. So it was then when I really started falling in love with ball. Obviously, my coach took a huge investment into me. Like after every practice, I had to catch up. Like I would, spend time catching the ball, spend time tackling, spend time like understanding the game. And it wasn't until like I really got to college, well, high school, when I realized, oh, this is something that, I can take it to the next level and not put so much strain on my mom because she was taking care of me and my brother at the time. And she was going to college and work. So ended up going to Riverview High School. A lot of people don't know that. I went to Riverview High School for 3 years. The coach lied and said that he was going to open up the offense because I ran a 4.5. We had Jalil Adai back in the backfield. We had Quinn Polite that ran a 4.3. We had Montreal that ran a 4.2. Then we had linebackers that was just downhill. Like we had everything. And he was just so stuck on running the wishbone. And I was like, "No, we're not going to get anywhere, but if you're going to continue to keep doing this, I need to transfer." So we played Plant High School in 7-on-7. And when I tell you, it was like a factory. Like everybody was jumping up and down, celebrating. And I was like, I want to be a part of that. So I gave my coach one more chance. I was like, hey, like, are you going to open up the offense? Like, what are we doing? Promised me he would. So my junior year, he did not. So we played Plant my junior year. We played Plant at Plant. Ended up having like that's when he decided to throw the ball. Ended up having a great game, but we lost. And I shook everybody's hand that day, and I was like, "Hey, I'm coming to Plant." I shook the coach hand. I was like, "I'm coming to Plant." So fast forward after the season, I'm telling all my boys, "Hey, let's go to Plant. Let's go to Plant." But for Plant, you had to move into the district, and everybody wasn't able to do that. And my mom believed in me. She was like, "Hey, do you want to do that?" I was like, "Yes, I believe it's going to give us an opportunity for you not to have to pay for college." So we had to move an hour down south to go to Plant while she still worked at the Brandon Hospital. So it was a huge sacrifice for her to drive an hour just for me to go to college or just for me to go to high school to have an opportunity to go to college. Ended up going to Plant, did the same thing. I approached it just like I did Little League. I had to pick up a whole new system. Shout out to the coaches. Like they was A1. We ended up winning states and I was able to get a full ride scholarship to University of Georgia. And I've had rides from Miami, Florida, like USC, took a visit out there just so my mom could leave the state because she never did that. So went out there, went to Tennessee and so forth. And the reason why I went to Georgia was for the simple fact that the cherry on top, my high school quarterback went there. But every time I went there, I seen all the coaches and all their kids just playing with each other. It was like a family atmosphere. But it wasn't until one thing that Coach Rick said, and I didn't know that he was quoting scripture to me. He was like, "Hey, I'm here to develop you to be a better man and a leader because we lack that. We don't have enough." Sold me. So went to Georgia, played 3 years, decided to leave because I wanted to help my family. And that decision came from me consulting my bishop, Aubrey Shine. Obviously, my mom, I prayed about it, but then Tony Dungy. So Eric Dungy played for us. And I was able to go to Tony Dungy's house and sit there and talk with him because I wanted some wise counsel before I make this decision. Because all my guys was telling me, "Hey, stay, let's go ahead and do it again." And I was like, "Look, when you're hot, when you're prime, you got to go ahead and take advantage of that." But there was one thing that I made a promise to not only them but myself is if I was going to leave, I was going to come back and get my degree because that's something that they cannot take away. So decided that I was going to leave. By this time, it's 2011, going on 2012. I got my agent, Joe Siegel, with a top-notch guy. Then I found my trainer, Tony Villani, out there in Boca Raton. So I had to separate. I wanted to separate myself and find the best trainer because I wanted to go ahead and perform at a high level. So as we're gearing towards it, I ended up going to the combine. You have to get invited. So I was just so grateful that I got invited to the combine. And we go there. I see a whole bunch of people that I know, play with, say what's up, but I'm here to, execute and talk to these coaches. So I got interviewed from 27 teams. And in this interview, it's just like this. All they want to do is ask you questions, make you think, and then they want to see, hey, are you worth the investment at the end of the day? And every team they ask you, hey, do you smoke? Do you drink? Because that can be like more money, more problems, or more money reveals really who you are. So if you have a drinking problem now, it's going to be times 10 once you get to the league. And I told all 27 teams no, because at the time I did not smoke, I did not drink, because I realized that if I was to do that, it would deviate my plan from getting to the NFL. And I went to Georgia to go ahead and do that and provide for my family. But yeah, obviously get a degree. So left the combine, had a great combine, performed very well. And then I had a couple of private workouts with Philly, and it was another team, did that great. And then I had a pro day a couple of weeks after at Georgia. Ended up going to the pro day, had a great pro day. The 40 was so, but they was like, look, you play much faster than you run. And then I had another private workout with another team I can't remember. So at this time, I'm like, look, I am tired. Like I've been doing everything by the book. I've been studying. I've been working out. So I wanted to just go ahead and celebrate with my guys while I'm in Athens because I had to go back to Boca that next morning. So I was like, all right, well, let me just go ahead and cheers to my accomplishment, and I had just turned 21, so now it's legal. So I decided to go downtown with a lot of my guys because they were still there because I left early, and I saw all my boys. Like I saw, I'm not gonna name names, but I saw all my boys, and I was like, yeah, you know what, drinks on me. I'll make it up when I get drafted. I'm not worried about it. So Bourbon, downtown Athens closed like around 2:30, 3 o'clock. So I had a car. I was getting sponsored by a dealership that I knew the guy. So he allowed me to, drive his car, drive a car off the lot. And it had room for at least a couple of my guys. So I was like, hey, I want to make sure y'all get home safely because I was the more sober one after a few rounds of shots. So drive everybody to ECV. That's our dorm where all our guys stay at. And one of my guys was like, hey, can you take me to this girl house? And I was like, all right, yeah, just tell me where she lives. So as we're going, he's trying to figure out where she stays, but he's drunk, she's drunk. And I'm like, look, we got to go. So as we get into a light, he's not sure where to go. So as we're approaching, I just stop, not knowing to the right of me by Waffle House, there was a police car. So he turns his lights on and pulls me over. And at that moment, I sober up. I was like, all right, well, we got to tighten up. So he comes to the car. He smells alcohol. So obviously, he's going to say, hey, come and do the test. I know for a fact I killed the test. So at this time, I'm calling our player development, Brian Gant, and I'm like, hey, what should we do? What should I do? He was like, hey, you're good. Just go ahead and just comply with the police officer. And then if he tells you to do a breathalyzer, go ahead and do a breathalyzer and we'll handle it on the back end. So as I get into the cop car and we go down to the station, I'm like, "Hey, sir, like, hey, my name's Orson Charles. I'm about to get drafted. Like, hey, can you just let somebody come pick me up? I promise that I'm not gonna do this again." And he was like, "No, you're good. I know who you are. You'll be fine." And when he said that, I was like, "Oh, shoot." So we get to the station and I blow. And the limit is a point oh 0.08. I blew a point oh 0.09. And he was like, "Oh, I thought you was way more drunker than that." I was like, "All right, so can I go?" He's like, "No." So after that, I had Gant came and bailed me out, and I go to my hotel, and all of a sudden, like my phone starts ringing. It's all over ESPN, and that's when I felt my lowest. Like I just felt low, low, because my mom called me and said that she had to leave work because everybody was talking about it. But then one thing that really hit me, she felt that she failed as a parent because of my decision. My grandmother was upset that I felt that I let the tribe down. How could I make that decision? And then my brother, so it was just me and my brother, and I was more of a father figure slash brother to him, and I wanted to lead by example. And I told him, "Don't follow what I've done. I made a mistake." I was very upset with myself. And the reason why is because I knew that and even just going along, because I had the brothers in the church, I had my pastor that was right there with me. So although I didn't have my father, like these men was like discipling me and gearing towards the right way. And I was just so upset because it was like, "Hey, once you think twice about this." So one thing that I loved about them, they would never tell me what to do. They would have me think for myself. And it was like, "Hey, have you thought about that?" But then they would always make sure that I go back into the Bible to see, "Hey, does he say we should do that?" So it was at that point where I was like, "Oh no, we're good." Like he kept me covered this whole time. At one point, like I felt like nothing wrong can happen. Like went to high school, got a state ring, got a full ride scholarship. All these things was happening. So I was like, "Oh, I'm covered. I'm good." And it wasn't until that point where I was very upset with myself. I was depressed. That's when I was at my lowest moment. But then, my spiritual father built me back up. So at that time, coming out of that, I had to learn how to forgive myself. Because once I gave it to him, he forgave me. But a lot of times we don't move out of that because we don't forgive ourselves. So ended up getting drafted. Because of that incident, I dropped to the fourth round, pick 116. But then I was a man of my word. So after every season, I would drive back to Athens and take 5 classes. But then that's when I had the most fun because I was able to just be a regular student. It was my second year with Cincinnati. I got drafted in 2012, so this was 2013. I was going back from Cincinnati to Georgia because I was finishing my degree. So as I was going back down to Athens, I had an altercation with a young man. Not sure how it came about. All I remember is just guy behind me just real speeding up to my bumper. So I pull over to the left lane to the speeding lane, and the guy comes to the right side, and he tells my girlfriend at the time to put the window down. And we're like, "No, no, no, we're not putting that window down." So we go to the middle lane, and he goes over, and he's coming back on my side behind me, and then goes to the left. And he was like, "Hey, pull over, pull over, pull over." So at this moment, I'm like, "Look, hey, what's going on?" Mind you, we're going through Cincinnati, going to Athens, so we had to pass Kentucky. So I took that into consideration. So he goes back on her side and spits on the car and says, "Pull it down." At that moment, like I'm very territorial of my girlfriend and whoever I'm dating as the leader and the protector. So I had pulled my concealed out and laid it on my lap, not knowing what was going to happen. So after that, he kind of fall back, and then I'm thinking that we're good. So we're driving, and all of a sudden I see a cop. And at this moment, we're in Richmond, Kentucky. So I see a cop, so I'm like, "You know what? Let me just go ahead and pull over." So as we're pulling over, the guy, comes up to the car. He said that he got a call, this, that, and the third. So instantly he had recognized me, and I was like, "Hey, this is what happened. We felt threatened. I'm not sure why this guy did this." So he was like, "Hey, don't worry. Let me just check the car." I gave him my gun. It was concealed. It was concealed. I had my permit, and it was registered to me. So he was like, "All right, let me handle this." So the guy pulls up, and he takes his statement. So he comes back and is like, "Hey, we're going to have to arrest you because he said that he felt threatened," after taking my statement and my girlfriend at the time statement. So I'm like, "All right." So we get to the station, and then his officer was like, "Hey, Orson, I apologize that he arrested you. A more experienced officer would have just took your statement and then let y'all go ahead and handle that." And I was like, "All right, bet. So can I go? Because this is going on my second incident within 3 years, and normally that's not a good sign." He was like, "No, we're gonna have to go ahead and finish the process." So we do that. Fast forward a couple of months when we're going to a jury discussion, the same officer comes in and was like, "Hey, Orson, we apologize for pulling you over. We did not realize that he had an aggravated assault, road rage, and a domestic violence on his record." And at that moment, I did not say nothing. I just looked at my lawyer and did not say nothing. So when he closed the door, I was like, "What was that for?" He was like, he just wanted to go ahead and defend himself. So we go in there, and they offered me a plea deal, a diversion. So if I was good for 3 years, then they'll expunge that situation off my record. So the only reason why I went home was for my grandmother's 70th birthday. I was there from Thursday to Monday. I was gonna hang out with a couple of my guys that I went to high school with. It was one of my guys that I'm real close with. I've been praying for him to get a job because he's been experienced a lot of things, and he finally got that job. So we was just gonna celebrate. I wasn't gonna stay out much longer. And I go down there. I have one of my guys that I went to middle school with come pick me up just so I can touch everybody while I'm there because I'm not home often. So he picks me up, we go riding down and we look for a parking spot. So as we find a parking spot in Ybor, it's about 11 o'clock. One car leaves and we're about to turn in, another car comes in, and then we tell them, "Hey, we were waiting for that parking spot." So they leave. So as we're turning in, another car comes in and we say the same thing. But then this couple decided to just be just rude about it. So I kindly step out the car. I'm like, "Hey, good night. How are you? Hey, we're waiting for that parking spot. We're not going to stay long." So she goes on to say, "Hey, no, you're good. You need to go find another parking spot." I was like, "Yeah, I know. I am great. But hey, we still need that parking spot because we spent some time looking for it." So at that time, she's still going back and forth. So I see her passenger, the lady in the car, go down to the floor. So I had my gun and I pulled it out and I put it down facing down. And I told the lady, "Hey, be careful with your next move. I have one in the chamber." So that's when, and I positioned myself so if she was going to shoot, she'll have to shoot her partner before she shoots me. So she comes up and she pulls a badge and said that you just pulled a gun on an off-duty cop. So at that point, I don't say anything, and I'm like, "Oh snap!" So she pulls off and say, "Hey, don't worry, I got something for you." So as she's leaving, my guy comes in at the parking spots. I tell him the story, and then at this point, I'm like, "Look, I'm not staying long. Like, I don't even like how this started over a parking spot. Like, let's go ahead and let me give my guy his stuff. Let me pray over him, and let's slide." So we get downtown, and it's four intersection. And when I tell you that there was at least 30 guns pointing at me as I was walking up, at that very moment, I lifted my hand. I was like, "Father, get me out of this. I fully surrender. Like, I apologize. Like, I'll saw out for you wholeheartedly." Because in my mind, I'm like, this is not how life is supposed to end. Like, this is not how it's supposed to be. I know you didn't get me through all this. And it ends like this. Like, I don't have no kid. Like, I wanted a kid. I wanted to be a present father. There's so much stuff I want to do in the community. So, long story short, I get booked for aggravated assault, carrying without my permit. It expired a year before, a year later, and then carrying into the jail cell because I had some weed on me at the time, 2.2 grams, and then entry into a jail cell. So that was 4 counts, 3 felonies. So as we go in, I get bonded out. I get a lawyer. We go through the case, and they came to me with a deal. And I was like, "Hey, I want to fight this because I did not pull the gun out because the lady said I pulled it at her. And then we don't know if she had a gun. They didn't even check if she had a gun. If you're an off-duty cop, most likely you're going to have a gun. So if I felt for my life threatened, then I have every right to defend myself." But they didn't do any of that. So I was like, "Hey, let's fight this." He was like, "No, let's just go ahead and, take this deal." So what the deal was is a year of probation. I had to do some community service, and then I'll be able to go back to the judge and get it expunged off. As I reflect, because I had went to therapy for like 30 days after the incident, and I was like, "Look, what's going on?" Like, I really dove deep with him. I started journaling, trying to track this thing all the way back. I realized, oh, I can't do what everybody else is doing. All my situation trouble came a reflection of me trying to be like everybody else when he called me to do and be somebody different. And I read a book, and forgive me, I forgot the name of the book. But then after I read it, I sent my bishop and I was like, you know what? Thank you for keeping us covered. Because not knowing that, hey, my mom's a single mom and she didn't have a man, like we was exposed. So imagine you going outside and it's just raining and you have no umbrella to cover you. So when my bishop took us under his cover, like he covered us, and then that's when a lot of the men started coming into my life and kind of like, hey, once you think about doing this or once you think about doing this. So that relationship with my heavenly father, that's when it really started because I saw how he responded to his wife. I saw how the men in the church responded to their wife, and I was like, hey, well, that's how it's supposed to be. And then I came to a conclusion that if I did have my earthly father, would I be who I am now? So once I really broke that down, I was like, you know what, Daddy, you knew what you were doing. I thank you. So I gave everything to him instead of trying to give everything to a man. My ministry is called Orson Charles Family Foundation, and this is how we serve the people. This is how we give back because we understand that serving somebody is the best thing besides prayer, but serving somebody is the best thing that you can do because you start being selfless and stop thinking about it, stop thinking that it's all about you. So we have actually four tiers. So the first tier is for the single mom, and we did two events where one was peace, praise, and Pilates because I definitely believe that if you feel good, you look good, you do good, you attain good. The same thing that they told us in ball. But then also, we always say that it takes a village to raise a child, but I believe that it takes a community to keep that village thriving. So if we pour into the community of the single mom and bring people that successful single mom to let the other single mothers know, hey, you can do it. It's not your fault. Hey, have you thought about this avenue? Then they'll start to feel better about themselves. And every events that I do, I'm always going to have you get up and move. Like it's power in getting up and moving, but it's also power in tapping into that community. Then we have the kids from sixth grade to 12th. I'm still trying to find out my patience if I can deal with the younger kids. I'll work with me on that. So we have sixth grade from 12th, and that's when really I started playing ball. But then I used ball to teach them more about life. So the main thing for the kids is making sure that they feel seen, heard, reaffirmed. I want to build the relationship, the same relationship that we have with our Heavenly Father. I want to give that to them, but I want to make sure that they have an identity in Christ, not social media. It's too many times social media is ruining our kids, and it's like, no, let me show you what it really is. So a lot of these events, yes, I have ball players come in, but I gear them to like, no, 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 we're gonna do therapy. So I give everybody a journal. Tell me how you feel. Then we go in smaller groups and I ask series of questions. So not only do I want them to write it, I want them to get up in their small group and talk it and express it, not knowing that, hey, whatever you're going through, another kid may be able to go through. And now y'all just connected without texting, right? So then another tier that we have is financial literacy. So we don't know how to circulate money. We're on the lowest podium as far as circulating money in our community. So let's break that stigma. Nobody's sitting at the table and talking about finances. So I partner with Vern Gwynn. He's a VP at Truist, and he comes in and do a day in the life. And he gives you a paper. This is your occupation. And he has five little podiums. Hey, are you going to buy high-speed internet or are you going to go basic? Do you have enough money to do high-end groceries or are you going to do regular? Do you have enough money to date or are you going to stay single? Are you going to go back to school to get more money or are you going to stay where you are? So now we get these kids thinking and processing how money truly works, right? And then because of my past, I'm always looking for ways to bridge the gap between the police force and the black and brown community. So this past event, I had one of the brothers in the church, he's a marshal, and he came and just spoke for like an hour, giving his perspective, not the man behind the badge, well, not the badge, but his perspective because he's still a man, a godly man. And I wanted them to start seeing that. And it went wonderful. A lot of these kids started asking a whole bunch of questions and so forth. So that's one thing that I want to continue to keep doing because a lot of the things that I struggle with, if I would have knew these answers, I wouldn't have got into trouble in the past. But I can't go back in the past. All I can do is make sure that a kid learn from my mistakes and choose better decision. And then we have a tier for the men. We talked about the men's and how we run away from our responsibility and our position. And the same reason on why I went to Georgia is the same reason why I have a tier for the men. So I did a panel where I just invited men's out, 35, 30 guys came out, and we just had an open conversation. Hey, I understand the weight's on your shoulder. I understand the responsibility. I understand that nobody really cares or understand. I'm here to walk you through it. I'm here to let you know that you're not alone. I'm here with you. And then we just start the conversation and you start seeing a lot of men just start to be vulnerable. And I'm like, all right, bet. There we go. Because a lot of times all we need is somebody to hear us, but then listen to us, listen, not listen to respond, but just truly listen and then guide us along the way. We're all looking for guidance. And then one thing that I've been really praying about and he led on my heart is gearing to the senior citizens. So I went back to Dominica to celebrate my aunt's 90th birthday and just spending a whole week with her. I realized that what they want is to continue, what they want is to pour into us, but what they need is patience and grace. It's no different than what the kids need, but they want time because they realize that they don't have enough time to give.
What advice or encouragement would you give to younger Orson?
It's not your fault. Forgive yourself. You got what it takes. Stay on the path, continue to trust in Him. Everything will make sense, but you got to believe and you got to set yourself apart. My name is Orson Prince Charles, and I am a kingdom ambassador.